quickly take a look at the practice problems at the end of module, module 57. So I'm going to write K57 up here, and the check your understandings are what we're going to do first. There's only one check your understanding here, and it's part A, B, C, and D. And it says for each of the following situations, what market structure does the industry represent? And the first one is 3 producers of aluminum, a good sold in many places in the world. And so if there's only 3 producers, that's not a monopoly, but it's also not enough to satisfy our characteristic number of firms of many. We'd say that 3 is a few, so that would be an oligopoly. Oligopoly, fun word there. B is there are thousands of farms that produce indistinguishable soybeans, a commodity sold to thousands of buyers. So that would be many buyers and sellers. And we'd say that there's no product differentiation. So with no product differentiation, then because it's identical products, then we'd say it's perfectly competitive. Perfectly competitive. Now, we know that in reality, probably the soybean market isn't perfectly competitive, but it's about as close as we're going to get in the real world. C. Many designers sell high fashion clothing. Each designer has a distinctive style and a somewhat loyal clientele. So this says many, so we clearly know there's many firms, so it's not an oligopoly. And we know that there's some product differentiation going on. And so if it's many firms, and we're looking kind of at the table above, and there's product differentiation, then we know it's monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition. So this is kind of like perfectly competitive, but there are some monopolistic elements, right? And so they have a somewhat loyal clientele as well. And that's kind of characteristic of monopolistically competitive structures. D, a small town in the middle of Alaska has one bicycle shop. So that would be one firm. And for them, there really isn't any other products, so we'd say that there's no product differentiation because it's a unique product. If you want a bike in that town, you have to go to this shop. So we'd say it's a monopoly. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at the multiple choice questions here. Multiple choice number 1. Which of the following is true for a perfectly competitive industry? Many firms, each with a large market share. Well, the first part's true, but not the second. In perfectly competitive, they don't have a large market share. B, the firms in the industry produce a standardized product. That is true. Okay, so we're going to check to see C, D, and E and come back, but B is probably going to be our right answer. C and D say there are barriers to entry and to exit, and that's not true of perfectly competitive. In perfectly competitive, there aren't any barriers to entry and exit. And then E, there are a few firms, each with a small market share. Now, again, even though they have a small market share, that part's true. There are many firms, so E is not right, so the right answer is B. Number 2. Which of the following is true for a monopoly? There is only one firm. Okay, so that's a true statement. The firm produces a product with many close substitutes. That's not true, because if it were, then it wouldn't really be a monopoly, right? You'd have multiple firms producing similar products, and so it wouldn't be a firm producing a unique product like a monopoly does. Then its third statement, the industry has free entry and exit. Free entry and exit means it's easy to shut down and to start up a new company. And if it's a monopoly, it wouldn't be a monopoly if it was relatively easy to start up a new company or to quickly exit the market. So we'd say that the third statement is also not true. So the right answer is A, one only. 3. Which of the following is true for an oligopoly? There are a few firms, each with a large market share. That's generally true, so we'd say the first statement's true. The second statement, the firms in the industry are interdependent. That's also generally true, is something that we would say about oligopolies. The third, the industry experiences diseconomies of scale. That's not necessarily true in oligopolies. That really doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense because actually firms experience diseconomies of scale, not really industries. So we would say 1 and 2 only, so the correct answer is D. Number 4, what's true for a monopolistically competitive industry? For this one, there are many firms, each with a small market share. And that's generally, we'd say, true. B, the firms in the industry, or number statement 2, the firms in the industry produce a standardized product. That's not usually true in monopolistically competitive. They differentiate, they do a little bit of advertising where they try to distinguish their products. So we'd say the second statement's not true. And the third statement is firms are price takers. Now, with monopolistically competitive, they have a small amount of control over the price within some limitations. And when we go to graph them later on, we're going to see what that looks like. But at this point, we can acknowledge that they aren't just taking the market price. So the third statement is also not true. The only price takers are perfectly competitive firms. So the only statement that's true is one only, A. Number 5, which of the following is differentiated products? So then we have Coke and Pepsi, which those are differentiated. They're essentially the same product, but they're slightly differentiated from each other. So A is going to be a true statement. Autos and bikes, those are not differentiated because they're not the same kind of product, right? Bikes and autos are different. Trucks and gasoline, again, not the same kind of product. They kind of relate to each other, we know, but they're not the same. Stocks and bonds, again, not the same kind of product. So we would say they're not differentiated. And then finally, gold and silver, again, though they're both commodities, they both share some things in common. They're not differentiated in the sense that we've been talking about, where they might advertise a slightly different version of it. So the correct answer is A, Coke and Pepsi. Okay, so at this point, we're going to do the last portion, which is Frq Prep Number Two. And we're going to find that this one's actually a really easy problem. So this is kind of nice. 2A says, draw a correctly labeled graph of a perfectly competitive firm's demand curve if the market price is $10. Okay, so this is the firm, right? Firm. And we have here quantity of output, and here we have the price, and we know that their demand curve is part of Mr. DARP. So we'd say MR equals demand equals AR equals the price. And it said that it's $10, so let's put that over here, $10. And then B, what does the firm's marginal revenue equal anytime it sells one more unit? So B is $10 every time because Mr. DARP is a true statement. All right, so hopefully this helped you out with the practice problems at the end of 57. I'll see you next time.